There we are. So Tony, I think I'll kick it over to you.
Okay, well, Diane, do you want to say anything to start or?
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Yeah, I did want to just welcome you all here and thank you for taking time out to do this. I know your schedules are more busy now in terms of teaching at home. And I would just say that know that the university and the college will do everything we can to support your path forward. This irregular exception that we're all experiencing will be taken into account. There'll be more information to come out in terms of how the university will be really accommodating for this. So Tony's got a lot of good information about well, the nuts and bolts of this, and then beyond that, we'll do whatever we can to assist you as well. Tony?
Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Anthony Crubaugh. I'm the Acting Associate Dean in the College of Arts and Sciences, responsible for personnel, budgeting, and planning. I'm sort of the Sergeant at Arms with your tenure and promotion cases. I assist candidates, chairs, DFSCs, the Dean, the CFSC. I'm not an advocate for anybody, but I'm here to assist you, so don't hesitate to contact me if you've got any questions or concerns. So thanks for taking time out of a Sunday afternoon here in March or a Friday in April, whatever the hell time it is, who knows? So we'll get started in a second. I will confess to being a bit trepidatious. First of all, because the nuts and bolts of tenure and promotion isn't the most riveting topic. So I will make up for in brevity what this presentation lacks in excitement. Secondly, I've never presented via Zoom. I don't teach online, so I'm not experiencing the reciprocal palpated energy of a face-to-face encounter that Dean Zosky referenced in her fireside chat last week. So in other words, I basically envision all of you rolling your eyeballs out there at me. So Mike's keeping track. Thirdly, something of a Luddite. So not only is my presentation low tech, but I'm certain that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen here, staying clear of leave meeting. Okay, is there a PowerPoint presentation up?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good to go. The nuts and bolts of tenure and promotion. First of all, just a reminder of what we are doing here today. This isn't a workshop on should I apply for tenure and promotion? What are the standards for tenure and promotion? If some of you aren't going up this fall, I would highly encourage you to attend those sessions that we do hold next year. So rather than that being our goal, our topic today is simply how do I apply? What are the dates? What are the key processes and so forth, as you would assume from the title of the nuts and bolts of tenure and promotion. Hopefully within 20 minutes or so, you'll say, gosh, that's pretty straightforward and easy. And you can sort of embark on your project with confidence and apply by November the 2nd. Budget your time wisely between now and then. And hopefully we will have demystified an inherently anxiety-inducing process. First of all, let me just emphasize that you should all, of course, be familiar with your ASPT documents, the ISU document, the College of Arts and Sciences document, and of course, your departmental document. So before you go up for tenure and or promotion, please take a look at those documents. All of these can be found online, the College of Arts and Sciences website. Under governments documents, there's ASPT documents. Otherwise, just pull up your mouse pad. Okay, here also on the College of Arts and Sciences website, you'll see the College of Arts and Sciences tenure and promotion application. This is last year's. We've got next year's ready to go. You can take a look at that just to see what's in there, what you'll have to do in advance and so forth. And I circle this because having confessed to being a Luddite, I just exposed myself there by taking a screenshot of my screen, which said how to do a screenshot in PowerPoint. So, okay. So if you're going up this fall, your application will be due November 2nd. That's a Monday. Sunday is November 1st. So what should you do between now and then? First of all, it's imperative to have a good conversation with your chair or director, and of course your mentor if you have one and are close to that person. The chair will have a lot of institutional knowledge, will know a lot about processes and so on and so forth, but most importantly, you'll simply ascertain your eligibility and your readiness to apply for tenure and or promotion. If you're going up for tenure, you've got a tenure year designation. Presumably it's next next August 16th, 2021 would be the beginning of your tenure, which means your application would be due November 2020. If you came in with credit from another institution, say 3 years because you had been an assistant professor elsewhere, you can return some of those years, no problem whatsoever if you don't want to go up yet this fall. If your tenure year does indicate that you should apply this November, I think the university will quite easily honor the stop the clock provision in the ASPT process. That simply means if your career has been disrupted for personal reason, health reason, having a child, or a pandemic per se, then by all means you can extend your probationary period. So talk to your chair or professor about that. If you are going up for full professor, presumably you will have been in your 4th year as an associate at rank. So ascertain that you're ready to go. Furthermore, the reason you talk to your chair or director is that departments and schools have many internal dates and processes that are crucial to tenure and promotion. For example, I think in chemistry and biology, faculty members have to give a seminar within 10 months of going up for tenure and promotion. In my own home department of history, people going up for full have to notify their chairs by May 15th. And that's so that chairs and DFSCs can think about a particular case, but also organize the gathering of external letters, which is point C here on your screen. So your chair will know the internal processes, internal dates. You'll have to talk about getting external letters. And that's another reason to talk to your chair. And lastly, it's the chair who's going to notify Arts and Sciences that you will be eligible for tenure and promotion. And we will then establish the SharePoint site that you'll see in just a few moments, okay? The other thing you can do between now and November 2nd, besides washing your hands, is think about your dossier, what you want your DFSC and the CFSC to see. You'll have to make a lot of PDFs, so do some scanning, get things prepared before November. And then of course you'll complete your application in SharePoint, and that's what we're here to take a look at. Let me say a couple of things about the external reviewers who will be crucial for an assessment of your scholarly productivity. The College of Arts and Sciences requires at least 3 and no more than 6. The identities of those reviewers and the contents of their letters will be confidential unless they sign a written waiver to be identified. They should be at or above the rank you are seeking. So no assistant professors at all. If you're going up for full, make sure that your external reviewers are full professors. CAS ASPT guidelines stipulate that you shouldn't have a mentor or former student, partners, co-authors, or co-investigators as those reviewers. And if you look at your own departmental or school guidelines, it will be very clearly stated what those rules are and procedures are for determining those external reviewers, okay? And you'll have to send out a research portfolio, almost certainly with the invitations that will be extended by the chair or director to those external reviewers. So this is another reason why you'll have to start thinking about your dossier and application well before November. Okay, very simply, chairs notify the College of Arts and Sciences that you are going up for tenure and or promotion. They'll email us between May 15th and October 1st. We'll create a SharePoint folder for each candidate. We will send you an email with a link, and then you'll have access to that SharePoint site to complete your application by November 2nd. And then the DFSC will take over after that, okay? Mike's looking for the blue hands. Okay, this is the email you will get from Arts and Sciences. Hey, we've set up your SharePoint site. You'll click on that and save that. Here's what that site will look like. It's a static picture right now. We'll go live into it in just a moment. There will be 12 folders, 7 of which you'll have to complete, but that's revealing what's behind the curtain there. Let me just say a couple of things about that site. Again, you'll complete folders 1 through 7. The director or chair will complete the remaining folders 8 through 12. We've requested that documents by and large be in PDF format. If it's a video with a link, you can create a Word document, what have you. Large items such as books can be submitted to your departments or to the college office. Hopefully these offices will be open in the fall. As on your CV, things should be in reverse chronological order. This probably goes without saying. And then one thing I'll show you in just a few moments, there'll be a couple of documents that you'll have to complete that have been pre-populated. The best way to do that is to download the documents, complete and save them on your own time and on your own computer, and then upload them when you completed them. That's just easier to do than work on SharePoint, okay? And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a moment. Okay, here I'm gonna switch screens and go live, I hope, into SharePoint, which I can't see, Mike, because there we go. Okay, that's what your SharePoint site will look like. Again, we'll have these 12 folders in there for you once you access it, and you're responsible for completing folders 1 through 7. So let me take you through them fairly quickly. The cover letter to the provost. Mike, do I need to download that or can I just show it?
Yeah, it should normally just open, but go ahead and download it just for time's sake.
Can everybody see that?
Yep, looks good.
So the cover letter to the provost, whether you write a 1 paragraph or a 1 or 2 page document is really up to you and based on departmental custom. The minimum is to simply write a letter to the provost requesting to be considered for tenure and or promotion. So you do what's comfortable, what your chair or director recommends. And that's what that looks like there. I guess I'm gonna have to. So Mike, how do I X out of that when you're covering my, there we go.
We'll jump back into that if we need it.
Okay. And how do I get Zoom out of here because I've got my.
You can close that window. There you go.
I need to close a lot of windows here.
Are you looking to get back to the PowerPoint?
No, to the.
Oh, I think you closed it. Did you close it when you closed the PDF?
I didn't intend to.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
If I close this launch Zoom meeting up on top.
It won't hurt anything. You can close that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Use your normal path, yeah, to get back to it.
Okay.
So this is a peek behind the curtains. This is not something you all will have to do. You'll get a link directly to your folders.
Open SharePoint site.
Yep.
Sorry about that. The I'm gonna have to log in. Okay. Back to the cover letter here. Sorry about that. So when you want to add documents or delete documents, you'll simply hit upload, click on file. Let's add something. And that'll show up in your folder. So I'll get rid of that. By deleting. Okay, so that's the cover letter in folder number 1. So the provost application form, this will be pre-populated, something that you will need to fill out. It's fairly brief. This one opened without a problem. There'll be a few instructions for you how to write a cover letter. It'll tell you a brief cover letter, your CV, it'll give some instructions for the departments, but that's the provost application. Just one page, fairly simple.
Tony, I'll chime in on this. If you open this PDF in the real Acrobat, not just the web browser like we're seeing here, you'll be able to type in those
Right.
fields. So for this document especially, it'd be really good to download it.
Right, exactly. So you'll download and then you can fill it out and then you'll simply save it and upload it as your application, okay? So fairly simple, just asking if this is what's your tenure year, if you're going up for tenure and or promotion or simply promotion. And then on the third page, this is actually a document that chairs and directors will have to access and the dean will access too, because they will tally the vote of the DFSC, they'll tally the vote of the CFSC, and then chairs and directors and the dean will certify the vote with their signature. So other people will access folder number 2 with that application from the provost office, okay? So again, that will be pre-populated. So let's move on to the college application form, which is fairly lengthy, but it's really just a matter of cutting and pasting your CV. Again, this is a document you'll want to download. I'm gonna click on this, but it's gonna show in sort of weird formatting. So the college application, again, it's on the college website, you can see it. It'll be pre-populated in your application. It'll have some instructions, remind you that there's 12 folders, what to do with large things. Here's how to get a SharePoint site. You'll fill out basic information on page 1, some general data about your education and prior academic employment experience. Then there'll be sections for teaching, scholarship, and service, not surprisingly. You'll be asked for a teaching statement or philosophy, no more than 2 pages, and you'll simply insert it right here on your application. And then everything else will simply be a prompt for you to fill out. New courses you've developed, published textbooks and so forth. Now this is a one-size-fits-all application, so a lot of things won't be applicable to you. Don't worry about having lots of blanks or NAs. Doesn't mean you're not worthy of tenure and promotion, just means that there are other departments that value some of those things, okay? It'll ask you about your independent work with students and so forth. Then we'll move on to scholarship. You'll write a statement about your scholarship, your research questions, your accomplishments, and that will be limited to no more than 3 pages. You'll simply insert that right here on the application, and then you'll fill out materials as appropriate according to the prompt. Grants and contracts, papers, presentations, speeches, and then service. You'll have to write a statement of your service philosophy and goals, no more than 1 page, and then you'll simply fill out the information about service. So you'll write a 2-page teaching philosophy, a 3-page research statement, and a 1-page service statement for your college application.
Hey, Tony, you got muted somehow. There you go.
Thank you. Am I okay?
Yep.
Sorry about that. So 5, 6, and 7 are folders for you to complete your teaching, CERP, scholarship, and research accomplishments. At the very least, you have to upload your syllabi. I think these are on Microsoft Word because they were done before the PDF requirement. So you'll just upload documents as you see fit.
Tony, we have a question in chat.
Yeah.
And that's, did you say that the teaching and research statements are copied into the college application? They are not separate documents?
Correct. They can be uploaded as separate documents in your folders here, but the CFSC likes to read those as part of your application. Dean Zosky, is that correct? You want to nod or?
Yeah, that's correct, Tony. Just copy and paste it right in there, and it's easier to flow together that way.
Okay. So you can organize your teaching folder. This is not pre-populated. You will create your organization in the way that you think best presents your work. To do that, you'll just go into new, obviously. You can click on a folder. Let's say you want to do student feedback. Can't read.
Tony, while you're typing that, I'll just chime in and say that try to keep the folders, I don't want to say to a minimum because that sounds too limiting, but try not to have folders within folders within folders. There is a 256 character limit, and that gets reached a lot more frequently than you would think. So just be mindful of that.
Correct. So there's the folder I just created. I'm going to get rid of it here. So those you can play around with and organize again as you think is appropriate. Scholarship, same thing. Some applicants don't have any folders. They might just list their 10 peer-reviewed articles. That's sufficient to show that they've more than exceeded the requirements from their program, and that's enough. This kind of reflects perhaps a history organization, but again, you organize your materials in the way that you think best presents your case. Okay. I'm not going to go into service. It's pretty self-explanatory. Let me just show you quickly what the chairs will do in their folders. Assigned duties of candidates. They will go in and basically indicate the courses you've taught. Independent studies, research projects, thesis or dissertation, advisement, and so forth. So this is
we have
all
a question. Nicolene, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, going back just a moment to the teaching materials, I noted that some of the categories were called sample, doing sample works, but under syllabus, it just says syllabus or syllabi. Should we submit a copy of a syllabus for every course, identical course for each semester? Or again, are these sample syllabi?
I think the application asks you to submit a syllabus for every course that you've taught since arriving at ISU or since your tenure and promotion. So I don't know if you need one for every class, every semester, but if you teach the same class over and over and over again, I think a recent syllabus would be sufficient.
All right, so a recent one, yeah, even though it may have changed over time for the same course.
Yes, and if you think that change over time is indicative of your thoughtful teaching and your pedagogical reflection and changes, then by all means go ahead and add all of those.
I see, thank you.
Okay. So this will be completed by the chair, and what the CFSC will get from this is just a picture of what you teach, enrollments, and then your typical load. Standard load is 3.3 in the college. If you got a different load, your chair will explain that as instructed in this document. Okay, so the chair will fill that out. The chair will also be responsible for submitting a narrative about student reactions to teaching and perhaps some quantitative data pertaining to that. ISU ASPT requirements are that candidates be assessed in at least 2 ways pertaining to their teaching. One of them has to be student reactions to your teaching. And so this document satisfies that requirement of our ASPT documents.
There's a question in the chat.
Okay.
What is typical evidence for the service folder?
What is typical? Sometimes it can be a commendation of good work you've done on a committee. It could be an explanation of your work as a member of a particular committee if it's not going to be clear to the DFSC or the CFSC. But if you're a member of the graduate committee, just had routine meetings, I'm not sure what precisely you would need, except maybe you had a major project that you were responsible for, you could include that. Things like that. Dean Zosky, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, Tony and Sarah, I would say that we're really going to look at what's on the college application form in terms of what service obligations you fulfilled. Artifacts or evidence are just additional. It's not something that's going to make it or break it. You know, Tony, you mentioned it's not unusual that you'll get a thank you letter at the end of a service obligation. We try to do those in the college office. Your chair might do that. So that's not make it or break it, having the evidence in there, really just listing what you've done, the committee work that you've done, and the application is what we look a bit more to.
Yeah, I would just think that if there was something that wasn't clear from just a line on your CV, you might have something in there that explains the tremendous amount of work you had to do that just went into that line. External evaluations of research. This is where the chair or director will upload those external reviews of your scholarship. DFSC or SFSC commendation. This is the letter, the recommendation that they will make to you and to the CFSC will be uploaded into this folder. There will also be in here a candidate statement of review. Once you get notified from the DFSC or CFSC, you'll have a chance to submit a statement about that. Thank you very much. You don't have to do anything except sign it. In fact, if you don't sign it, you're within your rights to not sign it, but you have a right to know that you've responded to the DFSC recommendation, and you can add a statement in there. If the recommendation is negative or lukewarm, in particular, this is something you might want to complete for the CFSC's reading. And then lastly, the chair or director will submit all of your annual letters of evaluation since you arrived or since your promotion to associate professor, okay? So any questions about those 12 folders? That's what your SharePoint application looks like. That's what you have to fill out. And that's what the chair will fill out. And this is collectively your application for tenure and or promotion. Not everything goes to the provost office. They don't want all of this material, but your SFSC or DFSC and the CFSC will look at this. Okay, then I'm going to go back to PowerPoint for just a couple of slides. So what happens after November 2nd? You've applied, continue to wash your hands, a little bit of waiting. So no, we don't need to know the details of everything that happens. This is, many months away. Once November comes around, we can look at, again, what happens after November 2nd. But just to give you a sense of the flow of your application, we'll take a few minutes to go through that, if that's okay. Very quickly, the DFSC will have access to your folder until December 15th. They'll issue a recommendation. The college will have access to your dossier after December 15th. It will submit a final recommendation to you and the DFSC by March 1st. Then the provost gets your materials, issues a recommendation, and ultimately the provost, or excuse me, the president will finally issue a decision long after you've forgotten that you applied for tenure and promotion in May. So everything's a recommendation except the president's decision. He has authorization from the Board of Trustees to make decisions. So we'll break this down just a little bit, fairly quickly.
Tony, I'll ask a question that I know has come up in previous years. So on November 2nd, I think it is, will candidates no longer have access to their SharePoint folders?
That is correct. You are shut out after November 2nd. Because at that point, presumably the chair is going to upload confidential things such as those external letters. So that might bring up those first couple questions on the slide, right? What if I need to change something? Presumably your chair and or director will be very willing for you to change your CV. If you have 50 typos on the application, hopefully you don't, but the chair or director can upload something for you if it needs to be changed. You know, frankly, or technically after November 2nd, that's your application. It's going to be reviewed by the DFSC. But most chairs will change things for you if that's necessary. Will they consider something that's late breaking, a new publication, or that your book was accepted and so forth? So the answer to that is yes. Your application is ongoing. So if something happens along the way after November 2nd, that can be considered by the body that has access to your application at that point, okay? Questions about that? The DFSC will do its work and has to submit an initial recommendation to you 10 business days before December 15th, which means December 1st. So you'll hear the DFSC vote. Gesundheit, Dean Zosky. I can't hear you sneezing, but I see you sneezing. So in that 10-day period gives you a chance to meet with the DFSC to talk about the recommendation, especially if it's a negative initial recommendation. You would request or can request a formal meeting, talk about why you think that they misunderstood, misjudged your application, and so forth, okay? So you have a 10-day period to meet, and the DFSC will complete its work and submit its final recommendation to you and to the CFSC by December 15th. If the chair does not side with the majority on the DFSC, the chair is required to write a chair report explaining why he or she disagreed with the majority of the DFSC, okay? So that's required. If somebody is in the minority, but not the chair or director, they can submit what's called a minority report. It's unsigned, but it explains why they think the majority was wrong in its decision, okay? So a chair report is required if the chair is in the minority. A minority report is optional for DFSC members in the minority, okay? So December 15th, the DFSC is shut out of your application. It goes to the CFSC in almost all circumstances. By that I mean, if you look at point 1, everybody going up for tenure and promotion to associate professor, your folder will automatically be reviewed by the CFSC. If your DFSC gives a negative recommendation for promotion to full professor, you don't automatically go to the CFSC unless you request for that in writing, okay? Note that the CFSC is not an appeals body. You don't appeal DFSC decision to the CFSC. The CFSC is a separate level of review for tenure and promotion. It reviews your qualifications. It makes its own independent recommendation, clearly with respect to the DFSC, but it doesn't decide if the DFSC was right or wrong. It makes its own independent recommendation. And that initial recommendation is due to the candidates by February 1st. And then there's a month-long process in which you have a chance to request a formal meeting with the CFSC or the dean if she's in the minority before March 1st. And on March 1st, you'll get your final notification from the CFSC. And if the dean is in the minority, she has to write a dean's report, and other CFSC members who are in a minority have the option of issuing a minority report. All right, everybody confused about that? There's going to be a quiz here at the end, so pay attention. If you have a negative recommendation from the DFSC, the CFSC, the chair, or the dean, you can appeal that recommendation to the Faculty Review Committee, the FRC. That is an appeals body for tenure and promotion cases. But please note that you can only appeal to the FRC if you've first had a formal meeting to discuss the negative recommendation with the body that issued that, okay? That's why you might be tempted to say, oh, look, my DFSC, I'm not going to change anybody's mind, so I'm going to skip it. Well, if you skip it, then you can't appeal it to the FRC later. Minority reports cannot be appealed except on ethics and academic freedom grounds. So again, we don't need to go into the woods here too much, but you'd have to notify the FRC in writing, submit your appeal by March 15th, and then the FRC does its work and issues its recommendation or report by a date that I can't see because it's behind some people's profiles. April something, right?
15th.
15th, thank you, Mike. I should know that. So can you celebrate yet, for crying out loud? It's almost over. Provost recommendations are issued by March 21st for cases that are not appealed. Things that come from the FRC and have been appealed, the provost will issue her, or I guess his next year, recommendation by April 30th. And then finally, again, the president will make a decision by May 15th. This is the flow chart of the process I've just described about what happens. It's in the ASPT documents, Appendix 4. The calendar that I've gone over is in the ASPD document as well. So again, just a sense of what happens to your application after November 2nd when you're done with it. Now, finally, after May 15th, presumably, unless you've ticked off the Board of Trustees, you can presumably go ahead and celebrate. So good luck to everybody. However, we're not done. I told you that there was a quiz. You're going to have 30 seconds here to respond in the chat with your answers. Mike Regilio is going to tell us when we have a correct answer and when the time is up, okay? So there are your two questions. If you get one correct, you will be allowed to apply for tenure promotion this year. If you get both correct, what did we decide the prize was? A tin of Dinty Moore stew. So 30 seconds from now, what?
I'll up the ante and throw in some spam.
Ramen noodles.
$15 seconds.
We done?
I got that on YouTube, by the
Okay,
way.
Mike, did anybody have the correct answer?
Yeah, there's a few correct answers
All
in
right, very
there.
good.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would have even gotten this correct. So 3, right? The DFSC or SFSC, the CFSC, and the provost will all make recommendations to the president. If your case is very, very complicated, you could possibly have 8. That would be highly stressful, so I hope that doesn't happen, and I'm not sure it has ever happened. But like I say on the bottom, go for 3. Good luck. And don't hesitate to ask me if you've got any questions whatsoever about the tenure and promotion process, okay?
Hey, Tony, if I could chime in, of all those slides that you folks looked at, and it's a lot to take in, but of all those slides, this last slide is the most important one, okay? So, you're all going to do fine. There's no question about that. But, as Tony talked about those 8 opportunities for reconvincing, that's not going to happen to you. But if in point there's any confusion along the way, Tony's available. He consults with us in the CFSC, but he doesn't vote. So he's able to stay completely neutral and in many ways can sort of be the liaison between you and the, for us in the college office in terms of how to understand this process.
Do we have questions?
I don't see any hands or anything typed. I don't think I missed anything. Maybe if anybody has a question at this point, you can still throw your hand up and then I can call in order. Looks like Joe turned off his mic. Maybe he has a question.
I was just going to ask why we have to wash our hands so much, Tony.
President's orders, I guess. So we can keep winning.
Okay, we have one from Jonathan who, if I remember correctly, doesn't have a microphone. So where will this presentation be saved? Oh, that's probably more for me. Temporarily, this will be on Zoom Cloud. So those of you that want to review it within the next couple of weeks, I'll send a link out to that and we'll find a place to put it more permanently after that. If you accepted the meeting invitation, I'll know who was here so that I can send a follow-up email. If not, if you didn't accept the meeting invitation and you want a copy of it, feel free to just shoot me an email. I'll type my email address in the chat. Although you all undoubtedly has received an email from me in the recent past, so you can look that up and then reply to it too.
Let me reiterate that just about anything after November 2nd, not really relevant today. You know, we just thought we'd take people through the steps just so you could get a sense of what could possibly happen once you're done with your application. But from right now, it's really just talk to your chair or director, look at the documents, start gathering your stuff. It's not history or rocket science.
You know, and I would say, Tony, that I think it is helpful to see all those steps through the process. It demystifies it for one reason. I think a second reason why it's helpful to see that, I am so impressed each year we go through this, how we have such an exceptional model here at ISU in terms of the levels of review and the amount of responsibility and how, I guess, appropriately diligently people take this responsibility of reviewing these dossiers and portfolios. And I've always felt good at the end of the year that the process works well and the process works very closely to the policy. You know, your living coral, or you may not have the physical book, but it's online, the ASPT policy. So this is really a protective process that really you do the work according to the process and your record will stand on its own. Other questions?
Yeah, we have one in the chat about how many folders do most candidates have for sections 5 through 7?
You know, Ross Kennedy is out there. He's been on the CFSC for several years. He might know. I was just there for 1 year. Diane, do you want to respond to that? I think it depends. I mean, the sample application that we just played with came from Marla Reese Weber, and she didn't have any subfolders in there. She just had her sort of 10 peer-reviewed documents and a citations index, and that was perfectly sufficient. So I'm not sure there's— I'm going
to go back to how I might have responded to Sarah's question about the service folders. What's in the college application form, the external letters, certainly in the scholarship folder, you probably want to put up your artifacts in terms of what your publications and grants are, et cetera. But the artifacts or evidence, they're really meant to sort of polish you off in a sense. Give more the contextual or qualitative look at your work. I see those folders, at risk of this, I see those folders as your points of pride. the way we sort of can get a feel for the quality and depth of your work, there's nothing required about those folders. So it really will look differently for each of you in terms of your areas of specialization and differently because of your discipline. So I don't think there's a wrong way to do it.
So thanks, Diane. That really helps. In asking the question, it's because when I have spoken with Marla before, and it was a very simple approach.
Mhm.
And I was just thinking, would you like folders that reflect a chronological, development over the last few years, or, should they be kind of what you talked about? And they're going to be different for each of those folders, 5, 6, and
Yeah.
7. But, would it be better to break them out so that it's easier for the committee members to sift through the information and then raise those highlights that you talked about? So maybe I kind of like the chronological piece because that's how I've been organizing my work. But
Okay.
I
Yeah.
just want to say also thanks I appreciate you and Tony doing this for us.
I would also say, I remember this. I don't know if Ross and Tony Crubaugh, if you remember this, the old days before we had things digital. I'm going to sound like an old fogey here, but the banker boxes where we had to fill these banker boxes with every shred of evidence. And it became ridiculous. We used to joke that we would make tenure based on the poundage of paper we could send over, So I'm going to tell you to be very reasonable. You do not have to put everything in the kitchen sink in there. Be judicious about what you want to submit that really represents, your work. But it doesn't have to be, gosh, every single email you got from every single student for 6 years about, thanks, Professor Crubaugh, that was really interesting. Use good judgment on it.
Can I add, Diane, too? I think, DFSCs or SFSCs possibly have 1 or 2 candidacies. They might want to look at more material. They probably have time to do that. You should ask your department or school what they expect from that. But the CFSC, frankly, is going to be looking at 20 to 25 candidacies, and it's not going to get really deep into subfolders. If it is, it's because it's really trying to figure out why you're so close to the bar. I mean, I don't think that those folders are that critical at the level of the CFSC, and the provost does not look at them at all. We don't forward to the provost anything besides your cover letter, your CV, the provost application, annual letters for tenure candidates, and they don't ask for them for people going up for full professor. So the provost does not look for external letters because they're not required of all colleges. So that's a lengthy way to make a point that the CFSC doesn't really spend a lot of time in some of those folders.
There are 2 questions in the chat, but it looks like Ross maybe wants to ask a question.
Yeah, I just briefly add on the artifacts that just think of it as, you're just presenting yourself and how you want to present yourself, and kind of ease of organization and reading, so that if somebody did read it, that they could easily follow it and will not be confused by it, because that's something you don't want a committee member on the DFSC saying, I couldn't even follow what this person's doing in these artifacts. You don't want that reaction. So just kind of clarity is really important, and just kind of having just a nice, clear organization to it, I think it is worthwhile at the DFSC level, because it will be read at the DFSC level for sure.
I'll go ahead and read Georgia's question. Can external reviewers be emeriti or co-editors or contributors of books you've edited?
Diane, I could have some
Yeah,
thoughts unless you want to take that one over.
Go ahead, Tony. Yeah.
Definitely contributors to things that have been edited. Yeah, that's no problem whatsoever. Co-editors, I don't know how close that is to co-authors. I probably wouldn't be excluded. I wouldn't want all 3 or 4 or 5 of my external reviewers to be that close to me. But that probably wouldn't be excluded. Would you think,
Yeah, I would agree with that, Tony. I would definitely agree with that. But I would also really co-sign with what you just said about you don't want to cast any aspersions at all on your external letters. So if you can avoid, now, Georgia, you're in a really narrow field. And so and we've had this situation in the past where there might be a scholar who has a really narrow field in a small group of scholars, and it might be difficult to get people with, that 6 feet of distance, but think about that. You don't want there to be any semblance that there's somebody who's biased in your review and beholden to it. So.
Yeah, and the external letters really are part of a package. 1 out of 6, that's a little bit too close. That's neither here nor there. But if 1 of 3 is problematic, that's a different kind of issue. In terms of emerita, that's not a problem. Presumably they're still tied to the field. More than welcome, obviously.
And we certainly had external reviewers this year that were emeriti, the old, as they call, silverbacks in the field.
Right.
I would just on external letters just make a pitch for you. As Tony's slide said, minimum of 3, no more than 6. And if you and your chair can manage this, it's a little bit nice to have more than 3, because if there's, you don't get to see those unless they've signed a waiver, And if one comes in and you only have 3 and one is a little equivocal in their support for you, gee, you'd sure like an extra 1 or 2 to push you way over on the other side. So think about that. Don't just skim in at the minimum unless it's just difficult to get people to do it.
And then it looks like there's a question from Eric. He's curious about review of interdisciplinary work. CAS has celebrated and supported interdisciplinary, but is this reflected at all levels of evaluation? It can be difficult to evaluate.
And Tony might want to chime in on this as well. My take on this would be that if that, Eric, you put out the question, if that also suits anyone else, be speaking to your chair and your department colleagues. I think it's most important that your DFSC understands that. So they've hired you on, they knew you were interdisciplinary when they hired you on, they hired you for that reason, So have those discussions ahead of time. And I think that is a much more critical discussion with the DFSC than it is for us up at the CFSC. Tony, do you have something?
Yeah, I would agree. And then just make sure your list of external reviewers is knowledgeable about your interdisciplinary work, and you have strong letters. I think, that will carry the day.
Could I pipe in there, Diane?
Yeah, Joe.
Just with the interdisciplinary initiatives and the cross-disciplinary work, we've sent out some surveys to faculty and chairs to find out what are the barriers to people doing that. And it appears to be, fairly different across departmental cultures as to whether, interdisciplinary journals are more valued or less journaled, or whether they want you in the primary journals in their own discipline. So I think it's fair to say that typically the CFSC and any subsequent review, typically their judgment is whether or not you're meeting your own department standard. Correct, Diane?
Mm-hmm, correct. Yeah.
I don't see any other hands or questions. But I did try to help you out with your hand washing. That's my virtual background.
Other
4:28, being respectful of people's time. Should we call it, Diane?
Tony, I want to just co-sign what Joe Blaney just said. So true. The CFSC, Tony mentioned we're all making independent reviews of your case. But one distinction about the CFSC, we are primarily looking to, did you fulfill the standard of your department, and looking to see that those standards were applied appropriately. We are not from each of your disciplines. We have a very diverse CFSC, obviously, so we can't sit in judgment of your work. We're looking to see that it met the standard. And Tony, do you want the last word or do you want me to have?
No, I think you should have it.
Well, I want to say as I look across the suspicious group here, I don't have any, I don't have any worries about you. You're all excellent. I'm not going to be the dean sitting in for many of the decisions. I have a great deal of pride in all of you. Work with your departments, work with your chairs. You'll be on the right track. And then if you need some consultation from the dean's office, Tony, the associate dean for this is available. That's the long term. The short term for 4/29 on a Friday is unplug and get your eyes away from a screen for a while and go do what makes you happy.
You're here.
All right.